All right. I would like to welcome everybody to the special planning council meeting of July 5th, 2022. It is 9:03 a.m. and I'd like to call this meeting to order. And in the spirit of reconciliation, we wish to acknowledge that the enduring relationship between Indigenous peoples and the territories they traditionally occupied. We recognize and deeply appreciate the historic connection they have to this place, the land, the water, the sky, and all that live on, in, and above it. We are grateful for the opportunity to meet here. And we want to thank all the generations of Indigenous peoples who have taken care of this place and who continue to care for it. And we want to show our respect. Hundreds of years after the first treaties were signed, they remain relevant today. May they guide our decisions and our actions. We commit to learn, to educate, to honor sacred places, and to take action towards real truth and reconciliation. And I just want to add, I think land acknowledgements are especially important when we have our planning councils, because our planning councils are about the land and the history and taking care of the land around us. And I would like us all to keep that in mind as we go forward today. Miigwech. As I begin this meeting, first of all, I have to thank Colleen, even though she's not on this call, for surprising me with a nice coffee this morning. It's helped me get my morning going. And I want to welcome a face that you have not seen on this screen before, namely Mr. Mariotti, our new CAO, day 2. To you, Greg, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Coetzee, and good morning, Council.
I also want to thank Julie. Is Julie signed in yet? There she is. Julie, I want to thank you very much for being our acting CAO for the past, what is it, 5 months, 6 months? I can't remember exactly how long it's been. I think you did a magnificent job for us. We greatly appreciate all the work and effort you've put into it, and that you are keeping our team as strong as it is by joining us in this meeting. And I suspect that we'll be doing a bit of tag teaming between you and Greg for the first couple of meetings, given that, well, Greg's sort of, as they say, wet behind the ears. This is only day 2. All right. And with that, on our agenda, the next thing is to ask our council if there are any pecuniary interests that you wish to declare in regard to this meeting. And as always, if any conflicts of interest come up during the meeting that you forgot about, I would ask you to interrupt and let us know that there's some portion that you don't want to participate in because of that conflict. Just want to confirm with our clerk's department. I understand that Mr. White is not going to be making a delegation this morning. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Borean will be still making a delegation. If perhaps you can bring him over. I presume he's on the other list, the attendees.
Moving him over now.
Thank you. Mr. Borean, welcome.
Good morning, Your Worship. Good morning, members of council. Good morning, Township staff. Simply, I just wanted to say thank you for allowing us to be present and to thank you for the work that your staff has done, especially Ms. Cadet, with respect to reviewing these applications and where we are in the process. We continue to look forward to working with you. I'd like to update you. I'm sure your council has. Mr. Pickfield, myself, and co-counsel Mr. Longo, who is also present here in my office, had a very productive meeting yesterday with respect to the master subdivision agreement, the proposed master subdivision agreement, and the proposed supplemental agreement. So we're pleased to report from our standpoint that the discussions were fruitful. We're also happy with the staff reports. I believe you'll be hearing from Ms. Cadet that there's been some minor modifications to the recommendations that we are prepared to advise, that obviously subject to being able to negotiate the two agreements that I referenced, that we take no issue with the revised recommendations. And I know I'm putting the cart before the horse until you hear that from Ms. Cadet, your planner. Having said that, also, I'd like to, just so that we have this properly framed for you, so that if there's any minor miscommunications in terms of what's going on, I would like to have you permit Ms. Phillips, who is our land use planner, to provide a planning overview to council and staff and to the public that's listening or participating here today. Her overview will take you through the two plans of subdivision to the north and south of Golf Course Road. We'll describe the phases shown on the master plan drawing and describe the types of development, that is the singles, townhouses, freehold townhouses versus the common element, that we are going through this process with you. I also would like you to hear from Bill Van Ryan. He's with Tatham Engineering, and I'd like him to provide a brief status update on the engineering design and approvals for the phases of the development. Again, based upon the master plan that you'll see and put forward by Celeste, by Ms. Phillips. And I'd asked him to just provide a quick summary of the work completed by Beacon with respect to environmental, so that you know that that's updated and where we are with that. And I don't anticipate either one of them being very long, but I think would be helpful. And then I would ask that if you have any questions of myself or Mr. Longo from a legal standpoint, we're here, Mr. Pickfield's here. We don't anticipate that there'll be legal questions, but we're available to any questions you have. And of course, Ms. Phillips and Mr. Van Ryan are available to, if you have any concerns or questions for them. So again, I thank you for this special council meeting, and we are available to hear from you if need be. And I think that the process that would be best is we go through the order that Ms. Cadet would like to take us through, and that council would, I would strongly recommend, your worship, and to members of council, that you deal with each one on a separate basis to ensure continuity with respect to how the reports are being taken in and not have any misconceptions. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Are we looking, I'm looking to our clerk's department as well as Ms. Cadet to have the presentations that Mr. Borean referred to before we go into discussion, or should we attach them to some of the discussion as each matter comes up? Ms. Cadet or Ms. Way. I'll go to Ms. Way first and then Ms. Cadet, please.
Procedurally, Ms. Phillips and Mr. Longo were not listed on the agenda as delegates today, so council would have to waive the rules of procedure in order to allow them to speak.
Thank you. I thought you were going to say something like that. Ms. Cadet, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it would be helpful to have the overview from Celeste and from Tatham Engineering, just to provide some context for the reports that I'll be presenting.
All right. So given that, council, would you be willing to have waive the rules of procedure and have a couple of brief, and I emphasize the word brief, presentations before we get into the, let me call it our agenda itself? Council. Councilor Wienko, is that a favor or is that a question?
The question, so we're having some people get some delegations. What's the concern? Sorry, who are they?
They're the two that were referred to by Mr. Borean. They're from Oak Bay. Want to give us a quick overview of the development and where they're at this point. Councilor Hazelton.
Yeah, normally when we have a more public forum like this, there's an opportunity for the proponents and the community to offer comment. Do we have anyone from the community who is standing by that would like to comment, or were they assuming that there was no opportunity to do that and therefore aren't here?
Ms. Way.
This is not a public meeting, in regards to, the way the Planning Act would set one out. So it's not open to receive public comments. As you are aware, there has been lots of communication circulated to council that has been submitted. And there is no open forum listed on this agenda as it's a special meeting of council.
Yeah. Any other comments? Council Cooper, please.
I think if we're hearing from the legal representation for the proponent, that we should offer the same opportunity to the community, at least somebody from the community. Thank you.
Ms. Gaudette.
Perhaps it would help council to understand the context. My understanding is that Celeste, who is the planner for Oak Bay, and my apologies, I've forgotten the engineer's name, but a civil engineer for Oak Bay, will just be providing context. They won't be speaking to the applications in particular. They'll just be doing an Oak Bay 101 so that the applications that I'll be presenting are given some context, if that helps.
And I think it's going, if I may add to this, I think it's going to be important when we get to each matter, if council's not comfortable making a decision on what each matter, then without a more fruitful conversation with the public, I think that's the time to comment on each one. Because I think in the list of the matters in front of us, some of them are more, dare I say, sensitive than other ones. And so I think that we have to take down the context of which each item. Councillor Hazelton.
And so I would like a little bit of clarity on what process we're in right now, if you wouldn't mind. It seems to me like we have a lot of material coming at us, a lot of opinions coming at us. I'm not sure that we've had a public session. I saw a note from Councillor Cooper this morning asking if this was in fact the public process, or if this was a precursor to the public process. And I can't say I really understand that process, where we are in this overall process. Clearly the public process is important. So could you just give me an idea of where we are?
Clerk Way.
Sorry, Ms. Gaudette may have additional information, but it's my understanding the reports moving forward. So this is I want to say not preliminary for some of them. Some of them will require decisions today based off the recommendations that have been brought forward in the reports. But some of them, these are precursors to future processes. There are public meetings still to come, which are outlined in the resolutions and in the reports.
Okay, Councillor Jarvis, please.
Sorry, I just need a point of clarification. I know most of the people that I'm looking at here right now, but I'm afraid I'm not familiar with Lori Russell. Can we have an introduction there?
Ms. Russell.
Hi, I'm Lori Russell. So I'm president of Muskoka Vacant Land Condominium Corp 64. So we are in fact the first parcel, or the first part of the development known as the Woodlands. So we are the detached homes adjacent to the Marina. My participation today is more related to an item further down the agenda, albeit I'm very, very familiar, I think, with the kind of community impressions and sense. So we've had a lot of experience, mostly very positive with Oak Bay, but we've gone through lengthy negotiations. So we own some assets that are on the agenda today. So I'm not officially representing the community, although I'm well entrenched within the community. So if there's any specific questions, I'd be happy to help you out, although that's not my official role today.
Thank you.
All right. My understanding, I mean, unfortunately, we use the word public in a couple of different ways. One is a meeting that's open to the public, and this meeting is, in the sense that the public can view it and comment on it. The other is a official, if I can call it, Planning Act public meeting, and that's where the public are actively invited to comment and participate, and told that if they don't comment and participate at that point, they may not be able to object in the future if they don't like what's happened. I think what we should, I'm going to recommend, and I'm going to ask council for their agreement. I'm going to recommend that we allow Oak Bay to briefly, and I emphasize the word briefly, do their intro to that, both from the planner and the engineer. And then let's get on to our agenda as quickly as possible. And each item we can discuss to whether or not we believe that we can go ahead or not with the recommendations put in front of us. And I think we need to do that item by item because each item is quite different from some of the others. So I think we have to look at those individually. So council, I'm just going to simply ask with a show of hands, are we willing to give a few minutes to Oak Bay to do a quick overview, set the context, if you will. This is not for them to express opinions of what should or shouldn't happen, just where we're at the moment, and then we'll get into the agenda. Council, are you in agreement with that? Giving them a few minutes to do a quick overview. I have enough hands up. Let's go ahead with a quick overview from Oak Bay, setting the scene, so to speak, and then we will go into our agenda and take each item as they come. So, Mr. Borean, was it Ms. Phillips? Do you want to start this off?
Correct. Thank you very much.
If you wouldn't mind giving us your quick overview of Oak Bay at this moment, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I will be brief and I will not offer any opinion on the applications before you today. I would like to just share my screen and explain to you the context. So first of all, my name is Celeste Phillips. I'm the land use planning consultant for Oak Bay. The property, as you know, is located at Honey Harbor Road on Golf Course Road. Oak Bay is made up of two plans of subdivision. There is one plan of subdivision that is on the north side of Golf Course Road in this area here. I hope you can see my cursor. And that consists of approximately 275 residential units and the golf clubhouse. And that is known as Subdivision 2005-7, 2005 being the date that it was applied for, and the -7 is the number assigned to it by the district. The second plan of subdivision is located on the south side of Golf Course Road in this area here. It consists of approximately 251 residential units, plus the Marina lands, which are located in this area here, with a planned clubhouse and boathouse storage facility. This subdivision is known as 2005-10. So if we look at the north side of Golf Course Road, I just wanted to give you the land use context here. Lynx Trail is a completely built out portion of Oak Bay. It consists of 102 residential units, and it's a combination of townhouses and villas, and construction, as I mentioned, is all completed. The second component on the north side of Golf Course Road is Summerside. This is a condominium plan consisting of 173 townhouses. Zoning and site plan approval have been provided and approved by council, but the development has not yet started. On the south side of Golf Course Road, there are a couple of different phases. The first phase that you saw developed was woodlands, consisting of 48 single detached dwellings, and they're on a common element roadway, and they are all constructed and occupied. There is the Marina in this location here, and the site plan for the docks was approved by council, and the docks have been installed. The Marina clubhouse and boat storage building have received site plan control approval by township staff, by township council, but that agreement has not yet been executed. The next section is the Marina Townhouse section, which is under construction now. This consists of 52 units. The zoning for these lands and the site plan have been approved by Georgian Bay Council. 24 building permits have been issued, and those are currently under construction. And Oak Bay is awaiting the township's issuance of the 28 remaining permits for townhouses in this location on a condominium roadway. At the end of Marina Village Drive are the 11 Bayside Units. These are single detached dwellings, again in a condominium format. And the Oak Bay the Oak Bay team is awaiting the issuance of building permits for those 11. So I would say the most active area on the south side of Oak Bay is this area here, consisting of the Marina townhouses and the Bayside 11 units. In addition, there are 29 approved units known as Waterside. This is also a condominium development. Your council approved a rezoning of this phase to reduce the total number of units from 50 to 29. And Oak Bay is anxious to have the District of Muskoka approve the revised plan for Waterside so that the permit applications can be made by Oak Bay. Also on the south side are Trailside and Twin Island. These are two additional phases of Oak Bay. We are awaiting, Oak Bay has requested and is awaiting a pre-consultation meeting with the District of Muskoka, and that meeting will involve township staff. But that is not an area that is actively being developed at this time, although there is certainly an interest in moving forward with the pre-consultation meeting and eventually development. Finally, there is the maintenance building that will be before you today. That is located here on the south side of Leduc Lane. It is an area that has been used as the maintenance yard for the golf course management. It is currently occupied by a number of CCANs, and the hope is that council will approve the site plan so that those CCANs can be replaced with a maintenance building once site plan approval is issued. So in summary, Oak Bay, right now, there are about 150 units that have been constructed. There are about 63 units that are under construction or permits are pending. And the next phase as Oak Bay moves forward is the Waterside phase, followed by Summerside. And that, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, completes my presentation. I would also like to thank Jen and Julie for their assistance in the last few months. There are a number of applications, as you know, and I think we're back on track to bring these forward for council's consideration. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that overview. Council, I'm wondering if anybody has any immediate questions of Ms. Phillips, or if we would like to just carry on and get. I'm going to take that as just carry on. So, Mr. Borean, I believe you also wanted an engineer to speak to this very briefly.
That's correct, Your Worship. Thank you, Bill Van Ryan, if he could be given the opportunity to speak.
Mr. Van Ryan, are you able to speak with us?
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Ooh, special effects.
I'm sorry about that.
I almost think you need a light show if you're going to have sound like that.
I'm typically not that exciting. I'm not sure what the problem is. I'm going to try to turn my volume down.
Do you have more than one electronic device going there, Bill?
I do not. I'm not sure what the problem is. I'm in a bit of an empty room, so I think I'm getting an echo. I'm sorry, I will be very brief here. In addition to Ms. Phillips' comments, I just wanted to pass along Lynx Trail and the woodland units are developed, fully developed. Lynx Trail is a municipal road, so it's been assumed. Woodland is private, that is condo. Summerside, our engineering drawings were approved earlier this year. Waterside as well have been approved earlier this year. We are working on Trailside, Twin Island, and the Potato Island lots, as Ms. Phillips mentioned, through pre-consultation. And In addition to the engineering work, just wanted to pass along that the environmental work that's been done to date, there has been continuous monitoring of the site, training for all of the contractors and their staff on site, and full environmental fence containment around each site so that we protect all species at risk that are on the property. And I apologize for the echo, but those are my comments, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. All right. I'm going to say thank you very much, Mr. Borean and Ms. Phillips and Mr. Von Ryan for your overview. And now I think I want to go to see if we can't get the agenda actually moving. And I think, council, you've been made well aware that the agenda, we're going to follow an order that's quite different from that which was on the original agenda that was circulated. Namely, we go in the order of 8A, followed by 7C, 7D, 7B, and finally 7A. And with that change in mind, I'm going to I have moved by Councillor Bocek, seconded by Councillor Cooper. Be it resolved, the council adopts the planning agenda of July 5th, 2022 as amended. The amendment is to basically the order of items. All those in favor? And that is carried. I'm just confirming as I look through the screen. I don't see Councillor Douglas. Is that correct? Ms. Wade, Councillor Douglas has not been able to join us to date?
That's correct, your worship.
Okay, so we may have to change some of the motions when the time comes.
Correct.
With that, let's get on to the meat and potatoes, if you will, of the meeting. And Ms. Gaudette, I believe you're doing a fair number of presentations here. I know that you've been doing a lot of homework, and we've heard from Oak Bay being grateful of the work that you've been doing along with the rest of our staff. But I also want to say to Oak Bay, I've heard from Ms. Gaudette and the others how they have been appreciative of all the time you've given them, and I think it's terrific when each side can work together behind all these reports, so that hopefully there'll be less conflict or confusion when the report comes in front of us. And with that, Ms. Gaudette, we have a staff report, draft plan extension request for S 2005-7 and S 2005-10.
Yes, I will share my screen here. So give me a moment. Just want to make sure I'm sharing the correct one. Can everybody see my nice blue presentation? Okay, awesome. Thank you. So good morning, Mayor and members of council. My name is Jennifer Gaudette. I'm a planner with JL Richards, and we are planning consultants to the township. As you know, today is all about Oak Bay. I'd like to start with the draft plan extension request. So as Mayor mentioned, we're going a little out of order just to reflect the largest applications in terms of the underlying fabric of these subdivisions to the sort of top layers. So with that in mind, I hope you'll bear with me. I'd like to do a quick planning 101 on what an extension request actually is. So essentially, this is a very simple version of it. The district is the approval authority. So Oak Bay applied to the district. The district circulated that application for township, public, and agency comment. The district then incorporated any comments into draft conditions. And then in the case of both of these subdivisions, they were approved in 2006, and that approval is known as draft approval. So then we get to step 5, which is when essentially the applicant begins to satisfy those draft plan approval conditions. If they require additional time, because any draft plan approval comes with a specific amount of time that the developer has to fulfill the conditions, then they require an extension request. So that's number 6. That's what we're dealing with for my first presentation here. And then just to explain the next step is once you've satisfied all the conditions, then a surveyor will prepare what's known as an M plan, and that gets registered and officially legally creates the lots. So then the subdivision is registered. So Celeste stole my thunder here a little bit, so I won't repeat in too much detail what she's already covered, but essentially Oak Bay has 2 underlying draft plans. The first is 2005-07 and the second is 2005-10. Here are the draft plans. This is the actual legal draft plan. So 2005-07, Lynx Trail and Masters Court have already been registered. So the extension request only applies to Summerside. And similarly, for 2005-10, the draft plan extension would only apply to the unregistered phases of the subdivision. So the purpose and effect of the extension request is to allow more time for the developers to complete the conditions of draft plan approval. So the application for extension, both of them were actually made in 2020. And since the township has not yet provided comment to the district has been offering monthly extensions. And we've heard from Oak Bay that that's causing financial issues, as in every industry, especially finance, certainty is hoped for. So we're hoping today that council will provide comment to the district, and then the district would proceed to make their decision on these extension requests. The original approval was in 2006 for 5 years. And since then, multiple extension requests have been granted for both subdivisions. The 2019 extension request was passed by Township Council. It was recommended for approval. However, there was a portion of the resolution that asked for the secondary access to be constructed in a more timely manner. To date, there's been no timeline provided for that access. And I would just like to clarify that that access is a condition of both of these draft plans of subdivision. It will remain so. There has been discussions between Oak Bay, the township, and the district about potentially altering or removing that condition. That will require a separate application, and it is not on the table in this application or any discussions we're having today. So keep in mind that access is not, it's staying the way it is. There's no active application to remove or alter that condition. So went a little bit above myself here. This essentially covers what I just said. There's no application yet to change that condition. And while the applicant can't change the conditions through an extension request, the approval authority can, which in this case is the district. So with that in mind, our revised recommendations, so this speaks to what Mr. Borean mentioned in his conversation with Peter Pickfield, the township's legal counsel for planning. This revised recommendation came out of that conversation. The only difference between this recommendation and the report is, and the district at the end has been crossed off. So township staff are recommending that township council recommend to the district that the extension request for both subdivisions be granted for a period of 2 years with slight changes in the conditions. The first one is just to reflect a new environmental impact study and engineering report that have been done since the original 2006 approvals. It's just an administrative item. They weren't covered in the conditions specifically, so adding those in. And then the second one will be discussed in closed session, but it's requiring the execution and registration of an updated master servicing agreement. And then that cross off in the district is just to clarify that that's a township agreement. So the satisfaction of the district isn't required for that agreement. That concludes the first of my presentations. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, happy to answer them to the best of my ability. And we have everybody in the wings to answer the questions that I don't know. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that. I believe I already saw Councillor Jarvis's hand up. Councillor Jarvis, you get the first question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two quick questions, just for clarification. Jen, the original draft plan approval was 2006, and public opinion was sought at that time, correct? There's been no public opinion sought since that time, 16 years ago, right? To your knowledge?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there hasn't been, to my knowledge. Extension requests are administrative in function, so they don't require a public meeting.
That's right. Okay, so I figured that. I'm just worried because, as I think is quite often the case over a period of 16 years, draft plans tend to change, and I'm a little concerned about the lack of public opinion or input, and maybe it's something we can address here somewhere along the lines, but I think it's something we've got to keep in mind. It has been 16 years now since the last time the public had a chance to provide any input, and maybe we should be giving them the opportunity. I agree with you, Jen, considering the circumstances, this is not the proper place to do that, but somewhere along the line, we got to do that. And then I'm going to go right off the rails and ask for some indulgence here, Mr. Mayor. Secondary access, I know we aren't discussing it, but I'd like to know what the heck it is.
Ms. Gaudette, do you want to respond to that?
Yes, I'm just bringing up the proper plan here.
I presume it's the other entry to the development. Yeah.
That is correct. I will share my screen again. Everybody can see the master plan.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that secondary access refers to this connection through Lynx Trail to Honey Harbor Road.
Got it. Okay. That's all the clarification I needed. Thank you, Jen.
No problem.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Cooper, please.
Thank you. I'm just wondering about any other conditions that have been removed by the Township of Georgian Bay to date. We know that there is at least one condition removed about a containment pond, but I'd be interested to know if there are any other conditions that have been removed.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if you look at the attachments from the report, it has the conditions for both subdivisions, and the ones that are crossed out, that means that those were removed through amendments. So the last amendment that I'm aware of was in 2011. There was a red line to the plan from the district. So when those conditions are crossed out, it doesn't mean that they were satisfied. It means that they were removed as conditions. I hope that's clear. So everything that's not struck out is a condition that they have to meet to register subsequent phases.
So just for clarification, there have been a number of things that have been removed, but they were removed a long time ago.
That's correct.
Yep.
And to just to follow up, if I could, nothing's being removed with this extension request. Is that?
That's correct. We're adding the conditions.
Yes, we're adding a couple, but we're not removing any.
That's correct.
Thank you. Any other questions with regards to this particular item, the extension of these draft approvals? Councillor Yanko, please.
Yeah, the condition for the second access is still in there, I assume. Is that correct, right? Okay, so that has to be resolved in the next 2 years. The other thing too was the updated environmental and engineering reports. You did that in 2022, is it? When were they done?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the updated environmental impact study was done in March of 2022. And that reflected all the legislative changes that have happened since the 2006 approvals. And the engineering report, I believe, was updated in 2019.
Okay, well, you would think if there's new environmental information been prepared, you would think that the public would be able to comment on those environmental and engineering updates. So has this happened or will it happen?
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, they haven't been publicly presented. My understanding is the environmental impact study wasn't actually required to be updated. Oak Bay did that of their own volition to make sure that they were still in line with all the environmental approvals. And how it works is by adding that condition in that references those updated plans, we're making sure all the recommendations in those studies rather than plans, are conditions. So essentially it ties, without listing everything in the report, it ties the conditions to the report.
Okay, well, I have a problem with that because basically if they haven't been issued or made available to the public, I think they should be as a condition of our approval today. So there's comments on those two documents. Not as you indicated, they're not even available to us to look at. So I think the public should be able to look at them and comment on them at some point. So maybe that can be made another condition of our approval today.
Okay, Councillor Hazelton.
So further to where Councillor Wienko was going on that, historically, we have taken an approach where environmentally related reports are peer reviewed by a non-applicant controlled organization. And I'm guessing that that has not taken place.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is technically a district application that we're providing comment on. So the need for any peer review would be determined by the district. But to my knowledge, there has not been a peer review yet. There may be one underway. Usually they take quite a few months for one this large, but I'm not aware of a peer review for the EIS.
So if I could, just to continue down that thought process, I haven't seen the district show a lot of concern for environmental matters in our township. That seems to be a responsibility of us and our council. I'm disturbed that we have had matters regarding Oak Bay and the environmental related issues surface in the past with great concern by the community, and championing Councillor Wienko's comment. I think the need for public visibility on whatever these reports are saying, first of all, that needs to be in the public domain and our domain. But I think more importantly, we have access to a peer review organization that we have used for almost every other application that has been environmental in nature. I can't understand why we wouldn't use that organization to do a peer review. I think that we have all seen the concerns that come from applicant-driven environmental reports. And I would certainly be very strongly in favor of exercising that process of a peer review and public consultation before we are asked to make a decision on this.
Any further comments? So what if I'm understanding council's concern, Ms. Cadet, it's that we're glad to see that the Oak Bay has updated their environmental review. We would like to see that shared with the public, and so for the opportunity that they can be reviewed. Councillor Wienko, followed by Councillor Cooper, please.
I have no problem giving the 2-year extension today. But I think one of the conditions we need to make is that those environmental and engineering reports either be peer reviewed and or the public comments made over the next year or so. But I have no problem approving it today as long as that condition is added before the 2 years.
Councillor Cooper, and then I see Mr. Borean has opened up his video, so I'll allow him a comment after Councillor Cooper, please.
Thank you, Mayor Kutzier, and I concur with what's being said by Councillor Hazelton and Wianco. So I think you referenced one of two things that we think need to be done. The second is public input and an independent peer review. Those both should be conditions for approval today. Thank you.
Mr. Borean.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, members of council. I won't get into the law on it, but I'll comment with respect to what's being asked. I think that the first condition that's put forward with the recommendation put forward by Ms. Cadet to you addresses the fact that we have to comply with the Beacon Addendum Environmental Impact Study. I will leave it to Mr. Pickfield to suggest that it can be dealt with within that first condition, that you would amend it to indicate that to additionally reference the 2022 Beacon Addendum Environmental Impact Study and 2018 CC Tatham Functional Servicing and Storm Management Report to the satisfaction of the township. And that would put your protection in place, respectfully.
Thank you. Mr. Pickfield, did you want to comment? You were referred to in the last comment.
Yeah, I was even told what he's going to leave it to me to do. So I guess I'll do something. What I was going to say is that, I mean, I think that Mr. Borean is correct that that first condition could be maybe slightly modified, but I'm just going to pull up the condition just for a moment so I can just take a look at what it exactly says. He's suggesting we add and be updated to the satisfaction of the township. And I suppose if that happened, then we would have enough flexibility and that we could request a peer review as well as request some public circulation or making it available to the public for comment as part of that. So I think I agree with Mr. Borean's that that would protect us and allow us to achieve both of those two objectives, which I understand are priorities for council based on the discussion so far. I don't know whether we need additional wording beyond that, but I think that wording would assist.
Mr. Borean.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, just to be clear, Mr. Pickfield, what I'm simply suggesting, and I think it works, is to the satisfaction of the township, and that would be wide enough to allow you to do whatever you may want.
That's what I just said. I think that's
right. I thought you said updated study, so I just want to make sure all I'm saying is to the satisfaction of the township. All would be added to the first condition, and that would tie into what Councillor Wianco wanted, Councillor Cooper, and Councillor Hazelton. All could be done at the leisure of the town to put that all to the public.
I think we're in violent agreement on that. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Hazelton.
I appreciate the confidence that the legal staff are suggesting that the words currently there imply. I'm a great fan of having things a bit more explicit so things don't fall between the cracks. And I would ask that we amend the statement to cover the things that we were just talking about so that things can't accidentally fall between the cracks, which is, I think, a challenge we've had in the past. Thank you.
Councillor Cooper, followed by Mr. Pickfield.
And I might add, not just falling between the cracks, but communicating to the public what we've done here and letting our constituents know that we've covered off something very important. So being specific and communicating using this clause that you're referring to would be something I would favor. Thank you.
Mr. Pickfield.
So just to be clear, it isn't leaving the condition as is. We would be adding the phrase to the satisfaction of the township. And I think to make it even more transparent, you could say for the purposes of providing an independent peer review and providing public access to the document, if that would be of assistance.
Okay, so at this point, I'm going to read the resolution modified, and I'm sure our clerks will be noting the additional words. And at this point, I have moved by Councillor Bocheck, seconded by Councillor Hazelton. Be it resolved, the council recommends to the District of Muskoka that the draft approval for subdivision files S 2005-7 and S 2005-10 Oak Bay be extended for a period of 2 years from the last monthly extension issued by the District of Muskoka, provided that condition 19 of S 2005-7 and condition 21 of S 2005-10 that reference the 2006 environmental impact study be updated to additionally reference the 2022 Beacon Addendum Environmental Impact Study and the 2018 CC Tatham Functional Servicing and Stormwater Management Report and report to the satisfaction of the township for the purposes of peer review and public access to the documents. Again, update the reports to satisfaction of the township for purposes of peer review and public access to the documents, and a new condition be included requiring the developers to execute and register on title an updated master agreement in a form satisfactory to the township. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. And that closes the staff reports element. And now we're going to go into the planning application staff reports. And the first item we have there, I believe, is comments on common element condominium application C 2020-09. Ms. Gadet.
Yes,
you can
and I
present
will,
many more times.
yeah, you'll be sick of me by the end.
I hope not. I trust not.
My next presentation is on the common element condominium application, C 2020-09.
Sorry, Ms. Gadet, we can see the upcoming slide. No, not the slide.
I shared the wrong one. You can see all my notes. Let me try
Yes.
again. Stop sharing here. Thank you for letting me know. I've gone through whole presentations like that before.
Oh, no.
All right, are you seeing the space screen?
Yes.
That's the one you're supposed to see. Thank you. All right,
Perfect.
full screen. Thank you. So similar to the last application, I thought I'd start with another planning 101, just to provide the context of what a common element condo is, so everybody understands what this application is for. Essentially, common element condos are used to allow non-condominium properties to share common elements. Usually this would be a road, a clubhouse, sometimes a playground, elements like that. And instead of having units, they have what's referred to as a parcel of tied land. So you'll often see poddles used instead of typing out that whole title. And essentially, the poddle is tied to the common elements through a condominium corporation. The approval process is similar to subdivisions in that condos would be draft plan approved, they'd have conditions, and then registration is required to finalize them. So this common element application is specific to the Marina towns. So that is in S 2005-10. So it would be on top of the registered plan of subdivision. Here is the actual draft plan. So to provide some context, this is the Marina Village Drive Road, which is owned by Muskoka Vacant Land Condominium 64. So that's the condominium just to the north of the Marina Towns, the woodland phase. So they own this entire road, and the common element condo is essentially a legal application to provide access to each of these dwellings once everything is sold off. So they would have access to the common elements through this frontage, which would let them use the road. There are a couple walkways that provide access to a boardwalk at the rear of these units. And then there's 7 visitor parking spaces here. So it's kind of a complicated plan, but effectively it's just a legal means to ensure access is provided and to provide 7 shared parking spaces for the Marina townhouses. So similar to the last one, this is a district application. So they're the approval authority, and they circulated this application back in 2020 for township comments. The township has yet to provide those comments. So this resolution would be providing the official township comments on this common element condo. Just some related applications to provide some context. Marina Village Drive, which is that private road owned by the adjacent condo, it's been relocated. You may remember 2 consent applications were approved by the Committee of Adjustment. Those have been finalized. In speaking with the district, they have identified that an additional application is required to formally amend the condo description for that existing condo to reflect the new road. This is sort of an administrative item. It doesn't impact anything on the ground, but I just wanted everyone to be aware of that because the district is going to make that a condition. And as Celeste mentioned previously, there's a site plan that has already been approved and registered for the Marina Towns. And this common element condominium is in keeping with that approved site plan. When we circulated this internally, a couple of township agencies had comments. The first one was snow storage, a concern that there isn't enough snow storage on the smaller condominium road. And as a response, so everybody knows, Marina Village Drive is a private road. It will continue to be a private road. And the township is not and will not be responsible for snow removal. Fire safety was also raised as a potential concern. Marina Village Drive, the entirety of it is a fire route, so no parking is allowed on it. And the site plan for the Marina Towns requires sprinklering of all 52 units. And these requirements are in the site plan agreement, which requires explicit language regarding these concerns to be included in all agreements of purchase and sale. So, as you know, when you purchase a property, you would sign an APS, an agreement of purchase and sale, and that would include these conditions so that new owners are aware of these conditions. With that in mind, staff are recommending that township notify the district that there are no objections to the approval of C 2020-09, subject to, and you'll note this is revised again, if required, has been added. So that's in reference to that application that the district identified. There's been a little bit of back and forth with legal counsel about the best way to ensure that has been done. So that's where if required came from. And then again, similar to the extension request, we've added in a supplemental agreement be signed between the township and the developer, and that's specific to the Marina Towns. Those agreements will again be discussed in closed session. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Council. Any questions? We'll start with Councillor Jarvis, followed by Cooper and Wienko, please.
Jen, did I understand you in saying that the road for the Marina Village, so Marina Village Drive is owned by Condo Corp 64, which is a group that owns a number of condos that are not part of Marina Village, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I have limited background in condo stuff, and I'd like to remain that way, but it doesn't look like it. At some point, do the condo owners that are on Marina Drive get possession of that road?
So this is why we have the whole legal team behind us to answer these questions. This was a topic of a lot of discussion. So my understanding, and please, legal team, jump in if I'm misrepresenting. My understanding is there are easements through the Condo Act right now that provide legal access to Marina Village Drive for Oak Bay and for adjacent lands. So that means that right now, Oak Bay continues to own everything on Marina Village Drive and in Bayside. So as long as that's the situation, they have legal access through the Condo Act easements. But when they go to sell them off, that's when this common element condo will provide that legal access and those 7 parking spaces. But that's how legal access is given. So the new condo corp that will be formed for the Marina Towns, if this application is approved, will enter a cost sharing agreement with the existing condo. And through that, they'll share in the costs and maintenance of the road. So essentially, this application is a complex way of saying we're going to share the road.
Okay, I appreciate the clarification. I'm not sure I understand things any better, or even anyway, it doesn't matter. The other thing I had, again, goes with the road. It seems to me that in past developments, including Oak Bay, at some point in time, the township has taken over ownership of some of these roads. Not always, but is there the possibility in the future that it would be requested the township take over ownership of that road, which would provide its own complications?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, Lynx Trail, which if you'll remember was at the north end, that's already developed.
Yeah.
That is a township road, so that was built to township standards and assumed by the township. The remainder of Oak Bay is all private roads.
And would remain that way?
They would remain that way, yes.
So, and in order for us to, if it were requested that we take ownership, then they would have to be brought up to township standards, presumably. Would that be right?
There would be a very complex legal.
Yeah.
It would only be in dire circumstances that would even be on the table, and it would be a very legal process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And just so many things, I'm quite interested in the environmental impact, and maybe this question, Jan, is outside of this particular piece, but I did notice snow storage. And in snow that's removed are chemicals, salts and so forth. And those can in turn impact as it go into the groundwater, et cetera. And so I'm wondering, as part of this, is there any language around containment to make sure that there isn't any chemical impact on our environment? That's really my main concern. If it's covered somewhere else, fine, so be it. But I just wanted to ask that question, and thank you.
So through you, Mr. Chair, those are site plan agreement sort of details that has already been registered on title, and it essentially clarifies that the future condo corp and the existing condo corp are responsible for snow removal for this phase. To my knowledge, it doesn't specifically address how that snow is to be removed or stored. but it does require it. I should also note, so this common element condo, the draft conditions have not been prepared yet by the district. But it would be unlikely that snow storage would make its way into the draft conditions for a common element condo that's dealing with the parking and then just those little strips in the plan.
Mr.
So
Sokach,
may I just follow up on what was heard so far, please?
please.
Simply that you reference a site plan agreement. Maybe another way to enforce it is the site specific bylaw to deal with this particular concern. So I just wanted to register my concern about the environment and how this might impact it, regardless of whether that's their job. It's our job to look after the environment in the area. So that's why I'm making this point. Thank you.
Mr. Sokach, you want to add to the conversation, please?
Yes, please. Thank you. Through the chair, just in addition to Councillor, or in response to Councillor Cooper's concerns, each of these developments requires a stormwater plan, which includes a means of cleaning or polishing the stormwater that is collected from the snow runoff and the snow storage. So that is addressed as part of the site plan approval, and it is a formal process.
But if I may just on that, I understood that we removed one of the containment ponds already. So I don't want to see more of that. So is there a containment pond related to this? Thank you.
And if I may, Mr. Sokach, before you answer, I've noted that Ms. Russell, who I believe is the president, has already commented they already face snow storage, serious challenge. That's a direct quote. So I think that it's something that further to Councillor Cooper is saying, I think we're very interested to know where the snow, the potentially salt-laden snow is going to be stored in the winter. Mr. Sokach.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are actually two separate issues here. Miss Russell and their constituents have the same issue that the township is dealing with right now with respect to snow storage for Lynx Trail and Masters Court, and we're working on a joint resolution to that, hopefully with the developer as well. But with respect to these applications or extensions, the stormwater, the pond that was removed, I believe my recollection is being replaced with a storm scepter or a mechanical system that is being put in place, I believe, to save space, and they can be a bit more efficient and much easier to maintain. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rienko, please. Followed by Councillor Hazelton.
Just a couple of issues. I think with the 54 or something like that units going in there, I don't think 7 parking spaces is going to be enough, but we fought that battle before and I don't know where that's going to go, but to have 7 guest parking spots is not enough, but that's going to be a problem down the line. The other question I have, and I was going to ask it sometime today, and I'm going to, I just take this opportunity to ask that question. I mean, it does apply to this one area. When this Oak Bay development began back around 2000, there was all kinds of plans for amenities. And I remember seeing a tennis court down by the Marina someplace. That seems to have been dropped. And I don't know if Jen can answer, what amenities are still planned for the Oak Bay community. Maybe the planner for Oak Bay could tell us, but I think they've been backpedaling on that requirement for years, and people are starting to notice now that there is a really lack of amenities being proposed for their overall complex. I know they built a swimming pool down by the down by the golf club, but I've never seen anybody in it. But maybe Jen, can you maybe indicate what amenities might be going in and around Oak Bay, and specifically for the Marina area?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I'm aware of I believe it's a swimming pool that's supposed to be in Waterside, a future phase of the subdivision. But if I may defer to Celeste. I believe she'd be able to provide a more fulsome answer for you.
Ms. Phillips, please.
Thank you for the question, Councilor Bianco. Yes, my understanding is that at the marina, there will be a marina clubhouse with, I believe, a fitness facility and tennis courts. And I believe that there will be swimming pools in either Waterside or Summerside. I just can't remember off the top of my head. Insofar as marina townhouses, your comment made by Mr. Sokash is that my understanding is that the storm scepter is going to be addressing snow melt. But in addition to that, I believe the site plan agreement requires snow storage removal by Oak Bay to be relocated to the marina area. And Mr. Borean, I'm not sure if you had anything else you might want to add.
Mr. Borean.
Thank you, Your Worship, and to direct to, I believe it was Mr. Councilor Wanko. The amenities are planned, they are going forward as each phase develops, and that's obviously what we're trying to do. And with your cooperation and assistance, that's where we're going. I think there will be amenities so that each, I'll call it project that you saw earlier today, be it Summerside, Waterside, that there'll be amenities. The marina towns, the marina itself will create the primary clubhouse that would have also facilities for wellness as well. So they are all planned and they are going forward. The swimming pool, through you, Your Worship, to Councilor Wianco, was opened just last week. We had, I believe, 170 people came through last week to the opening, and it was being used throughout the weekend, the long weekend. And it's open now to the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Hazelton.
Thank you. Wanted to just reflect back on a conversation we had with the folks at Oak Bay, and it maybe 2 or 3 years ago. This is kind of bridging from what Councilor Bianco's comments were. Oak Bay have already built out parking spaces for a insignificant number of guests. So here we have a situation where there's no parking in the street. There's only for 52 townhouses, there's only 7 guest parking areas. At the time, we kind of, as council, caved and said, fine, you've built it to the specs, but if I could just make a comment to planning and legal, we as council had verbally told staff that we need to change these bylaws or these standards for condominium development in our community, because they are the parking requirements are only useful in the city of Toronto, for example. They are not useful in a resort community where people come in every weekend and everybody has guests and there's no place to park, and people park on the roads, and it's summertime and wintertime. And so we have a disaster right now when it comes to parking. And that's what the community tells us. And that's what they told us a few years ago. And sadly, we've had change in planning and legal staff since then. But I would implore you from a staff standpoint to dig into this issue, because our condominium standards are inadequate for our community. And I would suggest that the parking spaces that have been provided are going to be a massive fail for this community. And we as a township, I think, should feel responsible for ensuring that developments that go in are in fact going to be successful. And we've already heard that there are snow disposal challenges. We have heard that there are parking challenges, and I'm not seeing anything in the design here that is going to resolve those issues. And that's what the community reaches out to us and tells us about. So I'm kind of waiting for answers to these issues before we approve things going forward. Thank you.
Let's go down further to Council Hazelton's remark. Was the site plan for this development, I believe, has already been approved?
Yes, that is correct. It has been approved already. But if council feels very strongly about this, they can, as a separate item, direct staff to undertake a study specific to parking so that we can ensure that the zoning bylaw appropriately reflects the comments that you've been hearing.
Councillor Cooper.
I would encourage that, and I would just add to this parking issue. And one of the reasons, if the sort of 7 parking spots for guests versus whatever it was, 55 or 52 units works in an urban environment where there's urban transportation. We don't have that here. There's no subway, there's no bus, there's nothing. So when people do come up to visit, the only way to get there is in a vehicle, and unless they're in a helicopter. So I suggest that we need to seriously consider what is being said here. Thank you.
All right. Before, I don't want to go too far down this, given that right now, I don't believe in front of us is a site plan approval. And so I think we have to try to keep on topic, though I think staff have heard very clearly our concerns, and whether or not we create another resolution, we'll have to discuss further. But let's stay on to this one now. And I saw Councillor Bochek's hand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for recognizing me, and you kind of reiterated what I was going to say. We need to stay on topic here and stay in the lane. I've addressed issues as the local councillor on the parking issues over at Oak Bay, and after a few years, it's been pretty much resolved. There was a problem with contractors parking in the parking spaces, leaving no parking available for the tenants or the residents, guests. And really, in the last 2 years, I've not heard anything about any parking issues in the developed area of this development. So yeah, I agree with you, Mr. Mayor. Let's stay on topic here, because this could go on all day if we keep diverting. Thank you.
I'm going to ask for confirmation from Ms. Gadet. The resolution in front of us saying we have no objections to the common element condominium. Is there any room for a parking thing in here, or should that be entirely separate resolution?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think it should be entirely separate. What we're doing through this resolution is providing comment to the district on this common element condo application. So parking, if a parking study is going to be directed, I think it should be a separate resolution directed to staff instead of to the district.
Okay, thank you. In front of me, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Jarvis, seconded by Councillor Wienko. Be it resolved, the Township of Georgian Bay Council notify the District of Muskoka that it has no objections to the approval of a common element condominium C 2020-09, subject to the submission and approval of a condominium exemption application, if required, to amend the registered description of Muskoka Condominium Corporation 64 to reflect the revised road alignment, and the inclusion of a supplemental agreement between the developer and the township as a condition of the draft plan approval. Any further comments on this resolution? Sorry, this motion. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, including myself, so that is carried. Thank you. I'm going to suggest that we continue on with the items on the agenda. Councillor Jarvis, you.
Sorry, pursuant to comments made just prior to us approving this this motion, which is fine by me, we talked about a supplemental resolution somewhere down the road. I just want some assurance we will see a resolution come before us with regards to the parking concerns that were just voiced.
Yeah, I was about to say I'm going to put that off and towards the end of the meeting.
Okay, as long as it's there.
And what I don't want us to do is get hung up on a half hour, 3/4 an hour discussing this or that in a resolution, because that makes me nervous of delaying things. So I'd like to move on with the current agenda, and then at the end, we may decide to either discuss that or ask that it be added to a future agenda. Because we will be meeting again. With that, next on our list, I believe, is a park lot control exemption application. Ms. Godette, I think yet again you get to present.
Yeah, okay, you're seeing space screen, hopefully.
We
And now
are,
you're seeing the presentation.
the cover page is in front of us. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you so much. So my third presentation is on part lot control exemption, again for the Marina towns. So this is my next planning 101. So what is a part lot control exemption application? Essentially, it's another sort of administrative process. The Planning Act establishes part lot control, which means once you register a plan of subdivision, part lot control stops further dividing without planning applications. So part lot control exemptions allow the township to pass a bylaw, which would remove part lot control from the Marina towns in this case, to allow further division. It's commonly used in townhouse developments like the Marina towns, and the purpose of that is to make sure that the lot lines match the party walls between each of the units. You'll also see it in industrial subdivisions where full blocks are made without knowing what size the owner is going to want. So then part lot control allows you to divide those after a potential purchaser is found. So just a technical part of this, it's related to the common element condominium that we just discussed, in that part lot control is required prior to registration. So not draft approval, which is what we were just looking at, but registration of the common element condo. And that's just to make sure that you can legally tie everything in together. So again, this is for the Marina Townhouse section of S 2005-10, which has been registered. This is the part lot control plan, and I apologize, I know it's going to be quite difficult to see at this resolution, but what you can see is each of the dwellings, the townhouses, is its own part. There are rear access easements, which essentially, if you're taking a lawnmower, say you're in one of the internal units and you want to take your lawnmower and you don't want to go through your house, that's what those easements are for. And each of the common elements is a part. So there are 111 parts proposed to be created through this exemption. Purpose is to create these parts to facilitate the common element condo that we just discussed, and to allow the future conveyance of these parcels. So it would legally subdivide that block so you can sell each unit. The district has provided comments on the part lot control application. They have essentially said that in their belief it is premature. They want to see that exemption application. So again, that was for the realignment of the road and ensuring that the common element or the vacant land condo to the north accurately shows that realignment. And they had a legal question regarding the ability to use part lot control. In this instance, I believe that has been addressed, but I haven't had written confirmation from the district. So I left this in here just to make sure that everybody saw it. And I also attached the district's comment letter to the report. This is another revised recommendation. It's been completely reworded, which is why I haven't done the strikeouts and the red writing, but the intent of it is the same. The original recommendation recommended deferral. This application changes to no objections, which better reflects the district's role as the approval authority for part lot control and removes duplication of the district's stated concerns in their commenting letter from the township's recommendation. So It's essentially the same recommendation, just worded differently, and that came out of the legal discussions between Oak Bay and the township's lawyer, Peter Pickfield. So I know this is a complicated one, but when you think about it, it's essentially just subdividing townhome units that will facilitate sale and the common element condo. So no development happens because of this. It's just an administrative function. Thank you.
Mr. Peckfield, you wanted to add some comments before I turn to automatic. Council Jarvis is always the keenest with his hand, so we know he'll speak first on behalf of council.
I just wanted to reiterate what was said by Jen, that this is really a very technical amendment that's standard. It's a standard administrative step that's necessary at this stage in the process. And the district's concerns, as I understand them, are also quite narrow and technical. I think the one concern Jen has said has been resolved, and the other one is just an administrative step that they say is missing. And what the rationale for changing the wording of the resolution we're proposing is because it's an administrative step, and we don't think it's necessary to come back to council at a future date on this. We can simply, deal with there is a bylaw that has to be passed by the municipality to finalize this. That's part of the legal process that happens, but it's a technical bylaw. So it streamlines the process, and it allows for substantive issues around these subdivisions to be discussed in council time, but not these just what I believe is just a purely administrative one. So that's the rationale for the way we've changed the direction.
So very, very simply, if I may, we're approving in principle, but the bylaw is not going to be prepared for our approval, the actual bylaw, until district says everything's okay in their mind.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right, we're going to go Councillor Jarvis, followed by Councillors Wienko and Cooper, please.
Again, just points of clarification in my education on condos. Jen, you talked about part lot control. Part lot control itself is the division of each unit, correct? With the property line being the firewall?
You're muted, Ms. Godet.
Thank you. So yes, part lot control is established by the Planning Act. So technically what they're applying for is part lot control exemption, which lifts part lot control. But yeah, think of it essentially as subdividing along that firewall and then creating all of the little legal parts that need to be referenced in the common element condo to legally tie everything together. But it's not, I know, it's not developing anything. So essentially it's just a legal means to subdivide an existing block in a registered subdivision that will allow you to separately sell each townhouse unit. Because right now they're all in the same block.
But sorry, doesn't part lot control accomplish that? Because we're talking about part lot control exemption as opposed to part lot control itself. So I guess I'm losing understanding between those two terms. The word exemption to me means all of a sudden you're putting everything back together again, not separating them so they can be sold. But I guess I'm misunderstanding.
No, you're on the right track. Part of it is that it's often just called part lot control.
Yeah.
We just shorten it as planners and in the industry, but technically it's lifting part lot control so you can divide it. But that's just a technical way. It's often just called part lot control. So people say I'm submitting a part lot control application to divide that, and you're on the right track. Your understanding is correct. It's just a linguistic quirk.
Oh, lawyers. Okay, appreciate that. Thanks.
Councillor Wienko.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but basically what this does is basically divvy up every square foot of the land, saying what's going to happen with every square foot. Again, I hate to keep flogging a dead horse, but if we said we wanted 5 or 6 or 10 more parking spaces, doesn't this put this whole approval into jeopardy, that you got to find more space, and therefore you got to maybe get rid of a couple of the condos and so on? So how is this agreement going to impact the later discussion on parking?
So through you, Mr. Chair, essentially, the ship has sort of sailed on parking in Marina Towns because the site plan has been registered, and that site plan shows those 7 parking spaces. The part lot control application will create a part on that plan for the parking spaces, but it's not really related at all to the underlying land use, whether it's parking or a unit or a servicing easement. They're separate applications, and the time to look at parking for the Marina Towns has sort of passed us by.
Well, we talked about this a long time ago, and obviously our comments were ignored then. And again, they're being ignored now. So I have real concerns in this approval right now that the Oak Bay or the plan or whatever's doing is ignoring our previous comments on parking. I'm sorry.
But Councillor Wienko, accept your apology, but we as council approved a site plan. I forget whether it was a year ago or whenever it was on this particular one. I remember the discussion well because it came up at that time. And one of the arguments that the developer provided was that each driveway was long enough for a second car. They have a garage space and a driveway space. And we probably with some reluctance, we approved the site plan at that point. This is not, the item in front of us is not a site plan approval. It is, are we giving them permission to divide up this lot into pieces so they can sell individual condos or individual units to potential owners, residents in this particular development?
But don't they have the ability to say, okay, we'll get rid of these 2 condos and we'll put in more parking? Is that too late to do that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Wienko. Yes, so when you approve a site plan, you're approving that built form and that layout. So the servicing is already in for that number of units. It's been contemplated the entire way along. And this application, the part law control application, which is before you, is administrative. In my opinion, the parking has passed us by for the Marina Townhouse section of this development. But there are many unregistered portions of the Oak Bay subdivision where the parking concern can be incorporated from the very beginning.
All right, thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Very interesting discussion, and I wanted to ask about holds, but before I get to that, with respect to this parking issue, and the ship has sailed because we approved a site plan. It's my understanding that the OLT recently has made a decision, very recently, site plans and site specific bylaws are 2 very different things. One's enforceable, site plans not so much. So that's a very recent decision, and I suggest that we should have some latitude here because of that. But that's just a comment, and I would ask Jen to give that some thought, but that was the decision that came out last week around the township of Georgian Bay. But also, I wanted to know, is there a hold in place on this specific area? And if we're doing, making approvals, so to speak, with the hold still in place, I don't know why we're doing that. Can you comment, please? Thank you.
Yes, I can share my screen. Essentially, there is no hold. I can show you this, the bylaw. schedule. So everyone can see the zoning bylaw?
We can see the map that goes with it.
Yeah, so here you're traveling down Marina Village, and here you're in the Marina Towns. You'll see there's no holding on this section. And essentially how it works is when you are considering a site plan, you look at the zoning bylaw. So you get your site-specific zoning bylaw first, and then your site plan is supposed to comply and implement that site-specific zoning. So zoning, then site plan, then building permit. I hope that clarifies.
Thank you for that. Could you comment on the effectiveness of site plans which show us where there's a parking spot or something versus a site-specific bylaw?
Sure. So the site-specific bylaw would contain items like the number of parking unit spaces that's required per unit. So it would say you need, I don't know, common is 1/10 of a space per unit. So if you had 10 units, you require 1 space. So that sets that building standard. And then the site plan shows you where those parking spaces are going to be allocated.
So do we have site-specific bylaws in place?
We do
On
for,
this?
yes, Marina Towns has site-specific zoning bylaw.
Councillor Hazelton.
I'd just like to offer a comment that the site-specific bylaw was intended to have been modified based on our input in the past to reflect a different requirement for parking than it currently does, and that has fallen between the cracks. And I would ask that we again revisit it. Thank you.
Councillor Wojcik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think I'm going to address my question to Jen. My only concern with this is that site-specific, changing this into individual part lots, as you've stated, is there a reason for this? Would there be a change in the status to the units? Would they become freehold townhomes or freehold condominiums by changing this status to making them individually divided and separated? I don't completely understand the purpose outside of course, you're not going to sell the whole condominium unit with 10 units to one person. You're going to be selling the individuals to individuals. But my concern is if there's going to be a status to what was originally agreed upon as far as the units and the status of the units go as far as freehold or condominium. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Wojcik. The short answer is no. So part lot control is just dividing them. It doesn't change their status. It doesn't change their underlying zoning. It doesn't change the site plan. It just allows them to be separately conveyable. So these townhouses will remain the exact same as they've been contemplated the whole time, which if everything we're discussing today is approved, they would be parcels of tied land to a common element condo, which allows them to access that road and these parking spaces, those 7. And that's the long and short of it, essentially.
Mr. Borean.
That's great. I appreciate the short answer, and that basically covers what my concerns were. Thank you.
Yes, I understand the concerns that have been raised, and Councillor Wianco and his worship, and those are the 2 I remember that were the most vocal about the problems with parking. That was discussed, as his worship has indicated, during the course of both the zoning and the site plan application. So those were dealt with, and the zoning permitted the 7 visitor parking. The site plan was approved the same way, was registered. Construction took place with respect to the servicing based upon same. The road exchange took place upon same. This is as simply as Mr. Pickfield, your counsel has indicated, a technical requirement in order to comply with the site plan. Nothing's being changed from a zoning standpoint. And the concerns you're raising with respect to the parking study, that was raised. I don't know why a citywide parking study wasn't initiated, but I think it's something that could happen, but it's not specific to this application because this application has been approved by this township and the site plan has been approved, executed and registered. Respectfully, this is simply a technical requirement to complete what we need to do to move forward for the purchasers that have been waiting for this to take place. Thank you. It's just a technical requirement that happens every day on every condominium application I've been doing for the last 40 years. Anyway, thank you.
Any further comments? I have moved by Councillor Cooper, seconded by Councillor Bocheck. Be it resolved that council notify the District of Muskoka that it has no objection to a bylaw providing an exemption from part lot control for part of blocks 1 and 2 on registered plan 35M-722. And the council directs such a part lot control exemption bylaw be prepared for enactment at a future council meeting once district staff advised the district has no objections to such bylaw. All those in favor? All right. Well, I'm going to go that we have 4 out of 6 voting in favor, including myself. So that is carried. All right. I'm going to suggest we take a 10-minute break before we start talking about the maintenance building, which I believe is next on the agenda. So it's now 10:45. So let's come back at 10:55, everyone, please. And we'll just take a 10-minute break. All right, I think people are slowly making their way back. We got 1 minute to go. Roughly. Okay. I believe the next topic to be addressed is the Leduc Lane site plan control. Ms. Cadet, you've been doing so well presenting to us. I think we'll give you yet again another opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will again share my screen. Sharing the correct one now. I will bring up presentation. Everyone can see the blue. Okay, so this is for the site plan for the maintenance building for the Oak Bay Golf Course. This is the subject lands. You may recall that it was previously before council in May of this year, and it was referred pending confirmation of the setback from the environmental protection zone. Here is a photo of what it currently looks like. So these sea cans or shipping containers are being used by Oak Bay Golf Course for all of their maintenance, storage, and construction materials here. It's not that pretty. There's no screening of it or anything. And this is what is proposed. So in the reports that I prepared, you'll note that I mentioned a 5-meter side yard setback, and I showed like a red mass shifted building. This plan has been shifted already. So this is that 5-meter setback here. And essentially we've got parking at the front towards Leduc Lane, some trees in the front. All these hatched areas are snow storage. So that's been addressed here. Sand and gravel storage, a wash pad, loading zone for the sand and gravel, fuel tank, more snow storage, and additional parking here. There is a link to the golf course, apologies, that you can see at the rear. And this line here has additionally been added. This is that EP zone. And this other hatched line is that 15-meter setback from the EP zone, and that is a zoning requirement. Just like to mention this 5-meter setback here. This parcel is part of the entire golf course lands, so the zoning interpretation is a little bit vague in terms of where that interior side yard is. I asked Oak Bay if they'd be willing to move it to the 5 meters. They were willing and they complied, so that's why it's changed from the version that you saw in May and from the version that they submitted that was included in my report. The purpose and effect of the site plan application is to facilitate the construction of a 1-story, 860 square meter maintenance building for the golf course. And that would replace those shipping containers and would allow proper site plan control. So landscaping, servicing, everything like that would be looked at instead of the sea cans, which are there right now. Staff are recommending that council adopt the bylaw for the site plan, as all the concerns that we are aware of has been previously addressed. Noting that the revised version with the 5-meter setback is the site plan that we would prefer that council adopt if they choose to do so. And this concludes my shortest presentation to date. Thank you.
Before I turn it over to council, Ms. Way, you were suggesting a modification to the recommendation. Can you explain yourself?
Certainly, I'm gonna chalk it up to a typo, so my apologies. The original one listed it as if we would be passing a bylaw today. But after further discussions with Ms. Gaudette, that was a misunderstanding, and just that the bylaw will be brought forward at a future meeting for final passing.
Okay, so the resolution that I have in front of me is moved by Councillor Hazelton, seconded by Councillor Cooper. Be it resolved that council directs staff to bring forward a bylaw for the proposed site plan control agreement for the OBG Gulf Inc. maintenance shed at 31 Leduc Lane in accordance with the revised site plan demonstrating compliance with the 5-meter side yard setback. So we won't be approving a bylaw today. We're asking staff to bring a bylaw in front of us at a future meeting. Okay. With that, we'll start with Councillor Cooper. I guess Councillor Jarvis was slow with his hand right at this time. Oh, there, I see his hand, so Jarvis will go second.
I hope I'm not, thank you, Mayor, and I hope I'm not stepping on Councillor Jarvis's toes, but I'm enjoying it, actually. Just wanted to say that a couple of things, get some sort of clarification. The 15-meter setback, Jen, from an EP zone is all that's required.
That's
Is that
correct.
correct?
Yes,
For a facility like this where there's a wash pad.
yes.
Is there a
that's correct.
containment area for this wash pad? Is there treatment of the waters going into the groundwater?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think that perhaps Celeste or Bill might be better suited to answer the technical questions. I just don't want to mislead council by commenting in error.
Can anyone from Oak Bay comment on the design or construction around the wash pad? Mr. Von Rijn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand there is a collection depression in the wash pad where the sediment goes to when you wash the piece of equipment, and then that sediment gets removed from the site. So any debris on the equipment will be collected on the pad and then cleaned up at the end of the washing.
Well, then what would happen to the water around that debris? Where does it go?
So that water then would filter off the wash pad through the vegetation between the pad and the property line. And just to put it into context, this is not a large volume of water that we are talking about. This is very limited volume of water. It'll be high pressure, low volume, intended to take the grass clippings off of the equipment, get it on the pad, shovel it up, put it in a garbage bin, and it gets dealt with.
Thank you. Councilor Cooper.
Yeah, just follow up. So there is runoff, and there are chemicals on the grass that are used in this facility. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct, but I would just like to reiterate that in terms of the volume of water and the volume of debris and the volume of chemical, what's being applied to the golf course will naturally be on the clippings, but the quantities and the volumes that we're talking about are so incredibly small that runoff from the golf course or runoff from the wash pad, it's the same volume at the end of the day, and it's within the management plan of the golf course to deal with all of that.
Thank you. And if I could just finish with, there's also a snow removal storage area or something, which also would have runoff, and it's 15 meters from a very important area, EP area. I have a great deal of concern about this. I'm sorry, but I can't see why I would approve this. I think it's going to be prettier. That's lovely, but I'm worried about the environment. Thank you.
Councillor Jarvis, followed by Councillor Hazelton, please, followed by Councillor Bocek.
Yeah, I think I can be brief here. There's on file now a letter from Mr. David Flower that addresses a number of concerns that I share, and I'm hoping that that is a letter that it's now on file, that those issues can be addressed before we see anything further come towards council. I just want assurance that that and the other letters that have been presented will be, their issues will be addressed. I presume that is the case. Am I right?
Ms. Gadet, perhaps you're best positioned to respond to that.
Sure, I'll take a stab at it. Through you, Mr. Chair. I haven't had a chance to review all of the correspondence yet, so I assume that Oak Bay is in the same position that I am. But I know that they're happy to review correspondence, and I'm sure they could provide a fulsome response once they've had an opportunity to review. I believe Mr. Flowers' concerns came in late last night or early this morning.
Yeah, they're recent, absolutely.
Yeah, so.
And I have no problem with that. I think I just want an assurance that between ourselves and Oak Bay, the concerns presented will be addressed. Thank you.
Councillor Hazelton, followed by Councillor Bocek, please.
So first, quick question to Ms. Gadet. Will this, when it comes back, be a public meeting?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it becomes complicated when we talk about this application coming back to council, because the province recently passed changes to the Planning Act where all site plans, including commercial, have to be delegated to staff as of July 1st. So technically, already this shouldn't be going to council. However, because it had previously gone and Oak Bay didn't object, we decided to bring it to council. But we do need to address this provincial requirement and bring forth a delegation bylaw. So I'm not sure when that will formally happen. It's something the previous managing or director was working on prior to his departure, and it never got completed. But it becomes a little bit, it's in limbo a little bit whether we're able to bring it back to council, given Bill 109's explicit direction to all municipalities in Ontario regarding site plan delegation.
So if I may, I would like to offer kind of a general comment. Our acting CAO frequently brought matters to council, even though technically she could have addressed them herself as acting CAO, because she understood the sensitivity of these items and felt that council input was important. And I'll ask a simple question here then. If we ultimately do pass a resolution delegating site plan control to staff as the province is mandated, do staff still have the ability to take similar actions to our previous acting CAO to bring matters to council for comment, even though council aren't required to control that particular topic?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure. I know the intent of the province's changes were to cut red tape, which is all the changes to the Planning Act have had that goal in mind. So I'm not sure where we can bring it, but I would encourage council to let staff know in this meeting what all the concerns are, so that in the event it does get delegated to staff, we can make sure that we have everybody's concerns in mind when we're looking at this, if it doesn't come to council again.
Okay, so I thank you for that. I would like to encourage a consultative process, even though council may not be required. I think what you are hearing today are concerns that have been raised that you may not have been exposed to in the past. And I think it's critical for our community and for transparency of the township that we continue to have some sort of process like that, even if it's informal, so that staff can be fully informed as to what's going on in the community as they go about making decisions that may have been delegated to staff. Given that this is not something that we are approving today, I'm delighted about that. I'm very interested in supporting the kinds of concerns that Councillor Jarvis highlighted in his comments earlier, and I think Councillor Cooper as well. I want to disagree with the dismissal from the engineer of the concerns from the environmental perspective. That is a generalization that we have had to deal with and wrestle with in our township, where some people who are not environmentalists tend to dismiss environmental matters over and over and over again, and that is one of the key. That is the key strategy of our township and of our council. And I think that we need to, first of all, dismiss comments about it's not important and focus on how is it important and how is it being addressed, and finding solutions to the concerns that the community have for environmental protection. Thank you.
Councillor Wojcik.
Thank you. And I think the concerns of the residents in the neighborhood, I would like to address to Bill from Tatham Engineering, if that's okay. This site is a site where municipal water and sewers are supplied as far as this property goes only, and everything from this property going north is not serviced by sewers and water, and that's a concern of the residents of the neighborhood. Like you said, high pressured water going onto a pad into a collection area. Either that collection area is hooked up to the municipal sewer and the water exits that way, or it goes down into the ground and leaches into the ground into the wells of the neighboring properties, which are not serviced by municipal waters and sewers. So it's a great concern to the residents in the neighborhood that grease, oil, antifreeze, not just grass clippings, all chemicals, pesticides, whatever, are going to be washed off onto this pad and then end up somewhere. And that's a great concern. And if you could just express to me whether municipal waters and sewers are going to be a part of this washing process, or is there going to be a containment area, maybe clay berm, some sort of filtration system, something. We just don't want to be washing this stuff into the neighborhood.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Wojcik and to Councillor Hazelton. I apologize if my comments were suggesting that this is insignificant. What I was trying to convey is that the volume of material we are dealing with and the type of material we are dealing with is limited in scope, limited in toxins, if I can use that word loosely. The comments with regards to what might be coming off of this equipment, there is no oil changing, there is no mechanical maintenance, there is no greasing or fueling taking place on this pad. This is to essentially remove grass clippings from the material so that it can be dried up properly and essentially extend the life of the equipment and then park it inside. So the runoff from the pad would not be directed to any direct discharge system, not to a roadside ditch, not to a storm sewer, pardon me. It will flow overland and filter through the vegetation, which is one of the best ways to remove the types of material that we're talking about. Really binding up the organics is going to bind up everything that comes with it. There is no requirement that I'm aware of for an approval beyond site plan approval for this type of facility. I'm not aware of a plumbing or ministry approval for something like this for a wash pad. It's certainly something we could look into.
Well, thank you for that. And I would really appreciate if staff would look into making sure that that is the case. I am very involved in the construction and equipment business. My people use grease guns to grease the reels and the cutting equipment that we have. Of course, when they get power washed off, that grease and everything goes right onto the surface that they're working above. So I would really, really appreciate that somebody take control of this wash pad and make us understand that there will be no environmental impact from the cleaning of equipment. Secondary to that, and I don't know if this is something, Bill, I need to involve you with, but maybe part of the planning. The neighbors have put up with noise from lawnmowers starting up at 5 a.m. They've agreed to concede to the bylaw change, which allowed Oak Bay to start the equipment earlier in the morning and not conform with our existing noise bylaws, but to get an amendment to it. Their concern is with this new building that there's not been enough attention paid to a buffer zone or a row of trees or something, or even insulating the building so that the noise from in the building is not amplified by the emptiness of the building and create more of a nuisance to the neighbors. So I don't know who would like to address that, but the building itself, I believe, is not going to, it's certainly going to clean it up and make it look pretty over there, but I don't think it's going to address some of the concerns of the neighbors. I'm just wanting to know if there's anything that I can relay to them about your concerns about noise and what you're going to be doing about it to help out. So that will be my final question. And I don't know who I'm addressing this to, but if anybody has an answer, that would be great.
Mr. Van Ryn, do you want to offer an answer?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bocek, certainly something we could have a look at. I am not aware of the recent concerns with regards to noise coming from the building. Typically, enclosing noise reduces the transmission. I would have to look at the building with regards to where the doors are facing, and I'm sorry, I'm not that familiar with the building design. We haven't been involved with that, but we could certainly have a look at that and provide comment on noise coming from the building during equipment startup, moving, that type of thing. Certainly the intent is to fully comply with the exemption or amendment to the noise bylaw that has been provided by the township.
Thank you.
Clerk Way.
I would just like to provide clarification. There is an exemption per bylaw 2022-030 regarding noise regulations. Golf courses are permitted to start maintenance at 6 a.m., which I believe is an hour earlier than the regulated time of a 7 a.m. start.
Sure, and I think everybody understands that, but the slamming of C-can doors and this type of thing carries on there, and they're just asking that during this process, since we're in the development process and we're moving forward with this new maintenance building, that their concerns be addressed as far as noise goes. And there's a lot of things that can be done on the engineering end of things to help to reduce the amount of noise created, being that we've given an amendment to golf courses to start earlier in the day. So I think their points have been made through me, and I will certainly stay involved with this and relay what I get back to them for future meetings. Thank you.
All right, I wonder if I may actually be asked a question. In this resolution, we start saying that we are directing staff to bring back a proposed site plan control agreement. I'm concerned about the last part of the resolution where it says, in accordance with the revised site plan demonstrating compliance with the 5-meter side yard setback. And the reason I'm concerned is that wasn't our biggest concern before. It was rather the setback from the environmentally protected area. You're also hearing a few other additional concerns, and I'm wondering, does it make sense just to delete the last part of the proposed motion? Or should we say in accordance with the concerns raised by council? And therefore be a little more encompassing.
Yeah, raised by council and residents.
Yeah, okay, Councillor Jarvis, you are supposed to be recognized before you speak.
Sorry.
So I'm addressing this to actually our clerk.
That was the recommendation as was put forward by Ms. Gaudette, so I can't speak to the 5 meter side yard setback, Your Worship.
Ms. Gaudette.
Sorry.
Yes, so my understanding from the last time this was before council was that it was referred pending confirmation of that 15 meter setback from the EP zone, which was confirmed. That 5 meter notation is just to make sure that I was tying the resolution to their revised plan,
Okay,
which shows that 5 meters.
but we have since raised a number of concerns, namely, for instance, Mr. Flower addressed a couple of concerns. We've talked now about the runoff from the wash pad and also some noise concerns. I just want to make sure that we're directing staff to bring back a bylaw agreement. I'm hoping that in the next presentation with that bylaw agreement, that these other concerns are addressed one way or another. And I didn't know whether that had to be part of our motion.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would suggest that you put your concerns in the motion in the event that it doesn't end up back to council with delegation in mind, so that staff can pick it up and run with it if that happens to be the case.
Okay. Given that recommendation, I want to add to this. We said in accordance with the revised site plan demonstrating compliance with 5 meter setback and addressing concerns raised by council, including I'm going to call it noise suppression, just and wash pad, can I call it runoff? And recognizing proximity to environmentally protected area. Council, have I revision? I see already 3 people volunteering to help with this. Councilors Cooper, Wienko, and Jarvis. Councilor Cooper, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Good to hear, and I'm glad to see the direction this is going. I would appreciate seeing the comment about snow storage along with the wash pad, because snow storage, there could be runoff from that as well, and chemicals, salts, and whatever in that. And I don't know. I'm also thinking that maybe we should be demanding a peer review of this approval from an environmental perspective. Somebody else is, in other words, an independent party coming forward and saying, yeah, we agree with Tatham, or no, here are some of the areas that we think need to be mitigated. So I'd like to see that added to the piece. Thank you. And I'd like to know from Jen, is there any reason that we can't request?
So through you, Mr. Chair, my understanding was that a scope DIS was not identified as a complete application requirement for this. But we can, I think we've heard loud and clear that there are outstanding concerns. So we'll chat with Oak Bay and with Beacon, their environmental consultant, and see if we can get something specific to this maintenance building. And I don't see a reason why we couldn't engage our peer review environmental consultants to take a look at whatever comes out of that.
So this, sorry, just to clarify, Mayor, if I may. So if we do engage a firm, it would be engaged by the township to bring independent opinion as opposed to being engaged by Oak Bay Development. Oh, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, with this resolution, we're directing staff to address these concerns. And so staff may bring in outside consultants to assist.
And that's what I'm suggesting, because we don't have environmental consultants on staff. So that's quite obvious. We have some environmental questions here. And that's why I'd like to see an independent review. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Woyanko, followed by Councillor Jarvis, please.
I guess my question is to Bill. It's not clear on the diagram here. Is this site fenced and gated? And if so, I would wonder if that the fence nearest the population could be made a solid fence, because that would really help with the noise suppression if that section of the fence was solid. But is this area secured with the fence and gating and so on?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I understand that there's a 1.8 meter high, 6-foot privacy fence on the perimeter of the property, and agreed that would help with reducing noise from the site.
Is that a chain link fence or a solid fence?
It's a privacy fence, so I'm assuming it to be like a 1x6 wood board fence, that it's solid.
Yep. Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah, once again, I understand referring this back to staff is a good idea, and bring it back to us is good, and a peer review idea from Councillor Cooper is an excellent one. I am of the opinion, though, we've gotten some good input from members of the public, including David Flower, and I really do want the issues that have been brought forward by he and others to be part of what staff consider before bringing this back to us. And I'm just seeking assurance that the issues brought forward by Messrs. Flower and others will be addressed.
I've added and residents to.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. That clears it up.
Motion. All right, I'm going to read the motion as I currently have it. And that is moved by Councillor Hazelton, seconded by Councillor Cooper. Be it resolved, the council directs staff to bring forward a bylaw for the proposed site plan control agreement for the OBG Golf Inc. maintenance shed at 31 Leduc Lane, in accordance with the revised site plan, demonstrating compliance with the 5-meter side yard setback and addressing concerns raised by council and residents, including noise suppression and wash pad and snow storage runoff, and recognizing proximity to the environmentally protected area nearby. Ms. Boutiette.
Through your worship, I'm a little concerned about the fact that it says including. So if there are items that staff miss, how will that be like portrayed? If a resident says, I did tell staff that, and it is so broad scope that, it leaves the potential for something to be missed.
I don't know. Including to me just means that these things, we want these items addressed, and there is the option of including more. We are asking staff to respond to our concerns. Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, I think we could say including but not limited to, but I also didn't hear any verbiage around the peer review. Did I miss that, Mayor?
Well, I didn't put that in there intentionally because I consider if we're asking staff, staff will automatically, in order to do this, they have to review the reports and whether I mean, I don't think we want a peer review reviewing staff review, if you know what I mean.
No, I just want them to be reviewing what has been presented to us and reviewing what the concerns are that have been raised. And given that we don't have any environmental specialists on staff, that would be natural. That it's a bit like all the legal opinions I keep hearing about, and we don't have any lawyers on staff either. So I'm just trying to make sure that there's nothing against what the staff can provide for us, but I think we need the expert advice as well. That's all. Thank you.
We have to leave it up to our CAO to bring the appropriate staff / consultants in to do the work as directed by council. And I don't want to force their hand by saying you must bring in a peer review, because a peer review has to review something. And if we don't want the peer reviewer to reviewing work that staff is doing, unless staff feel it's necessary. Councillor Hazelton.
At the risk of beating a dead horse here, I'm not looking for a peer review necessarily. I'm just looking for environmental expertise to be brought to the table. And as Councillor Cooper has said, we don't have the environmental expertise on staff, but we have a consultant who we have approved to where we can reach out to that consultant for input on matters of concern. And I would hope that in this process of direction of staff that we either include the recommendation of gaining that environmental comment or somehow, some way that we get assurances that that path which we have gone to great lengths to set in place can be leveraged to the benefit of the environment and the residents concerned. Thank you.
All right, but I don't want to, in our resolution, name the specific individuals or companies who are going to be doing this work, because that'd be like saying, okay, we're not going to accept this unless we know Ms. Gaudette did the work. I don't think we want to do that.
No, but at the same time, we have to recognize that we don't have the environmental expertise in the current staff model.
Nor do we have the planning expertise in the current staff model, because that's why we're using consultants.
Fine.
CEO Mariotti.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think from staff's perspective, we will definitely have a look at what the opportunities are in terms of making sure that we maintain good environmental stewardship there. From what I understand, please correct me if I'm wrong. I know Ms. Gaudette has got her hand up there, but from my limited understanding at this point is that there are activities that are currently going on there that have not had any environmental impact as far as I know to date. And so the activities are not necessarily changing with the addition of this building. The building in effect, complete with a wash pad, should actually assist with maintaining the environmental stewardship that is going on there right now. There are things that staff can look at in terms of environmentally friendly greases and lubricants, etc. That maybe Oak Bay is already employing. We don't know, but that's something that staff can definitely look into together with any sound issues. Again, I'm being new to this. However, I've not heard of any noise complaints currently. And so adding a more formal building as opposed to the current sea containers, in my humble opinion, could only improve on noise issues.
Thank you. Ms. Gaudette.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd just like to clarify to council that anytime we need expertise that township staff don't have, whether it be engineering, legal, environmental, we do reach out as a matter of course. So I don't think it has to be explicit in the recommendation or the resolution. It's sort of the way that we operate already. We sort of have our own silos and we interact and reach out as required. And that's sort of how we work on the staff side.
All right, thank you. I'm going to read the multiply revised resolution. Ms. Way, I'm hoping your shorthand methodologies are up to this. I have moved by Councillor Hazelton, seconded by Councillor Cooper. Be it resolved that council directs staff to bring forward a bylaw for the proposed site plan control agreement for the OBG Golf Inc. maintenance shed at 31 Leduc Lane in accordance with the revised site plan demonstrating compliance with the 5-meter side yard setback and addressing concerns raised by council and residents, including noise suppression and wash pad and snow storage runoff, and recognizing the proximity to the environmentally protected area nearby. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much.
Mayor, may I make a quick comment?
You may.
So this is to Ms. Godet. Thank you. I love what you have said. I just want you to understand that our history hasn't behaved as you have described. And I thank you for your comments about leveraging the expertise that we don't have in-house. And I ask that you continue to exercise that external expertise as needed because it hasn't been done in the past. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Our final open session topic that was on our agenda is in regards to Oak Bay Developments applying for a temporary use application. Ms. Godet, I believe you're speaking to this one as well. You are muted if you're speaking.
Okay, now I'm on.
Now we can hear you, and we're somewhere lost in the Milky Way.
Yeah, that's where I spend most of my time too. Okay, everyone can see my blue screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so this is for the temporary use zoning bylaw amendment for rock crushing that has been applied for Oak Bay. I would like to clarify that this is for information only. So this is not the public meeting. A public meeting will be required. So this is sort of a preemptive FYI report and presentation to let everybody know that this has been applied for, and we're hoping to proceed to the next steps to get public input on this application. So Oak Bay has applied for a temporary zoning bylaw amendment to permit rock crushing on the Summerside portion of Oak Bay. That's where they're currently stockpiling rock materials that have been produced through the excavation of other developments within Oak Bay. So as they've been developing, they've been stockpiling, and they're looking for permission to crush that on site. The permission request is for a period of 2 years from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., 6 days a week. So as I just stated, it's for permission to operate their crushing materials for 6 days a week for a period of 2 years on Summerside. The analysis is pretty brief on this. It is not currently permitted in the township zoning bylaw. And we've had some legal opinions from Oak Bay and from Peter Pickfield regarding the Aggregate Resources Act, which regulates quarries and rock crushing. And my understanding is the consensus is that the ARA does not consider crushing for the construction of condominium roads. So it is not permitted as of right through the ARA, which would require, therefore, this temporary zoning bylaw amendment. Our recommendation is pretty brief. It's that a public meeting be held to gather public input on this application, and from there proceed with next steps, which may be studies or revisions or it depends on what comes out of the public meeting, but proceed to the next steps in this application. And that concludes my final presentation.
Now it was my turn to be muted. Sorry about that. Council, the resolution is very, I'll call it straightforward. And this was basically the resolution says this is brought forward for information and that we acknowledge that a public meeting will take place. So I'm going to encourage our discussion to be relatively brief because we are not going to be making a decision today in regard to whether or not rock crushing should be allowed. With that, Councillor Cooper, followed by Councillor Yanko, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I realize we're not approving this today, but this is an information gathering process, I believe. And we've had a report. I do have some questions. First of all, is there a hold on this particular Summerside area presently in place? Jen, could you answer that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Cooper, there is a hold. However, it is not directly related to this, as it wouldn't address rock crushing. Rock crushing is sort of outside the zoning bylaw consideration when it's not within the aggregate extraction zone. But there is a hold. It's just related to the underlying residential development.
Thank you. There's a hold in place. I wanted to also clarify with respect, it's my understanding there has been some rock crushing completed, I believe, over in the Marine area over the last couple of years or 18 months. Was there approval given for that rock crushing? I've been told there wasn't, and it was also very disruptive, but I'd like to know about the approval. Do you know if there was approval given for that? And I have a third question. Thank you.
So through you, Mr. Chair, my understanding is that there was no previous approval for any crushing on site. I have only been working with the township since late March, so there are some of the historical gaps, but my understanding is that this is the first time Oak Bay has applied to formalize the rock crushing in any phase of Oak Bay.
But you are aware that there was rock crushing carried on illegally?
Yes.
That's concerning. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. Did we give approval for the storage of this material in the Summerside area? Do you know whether we gave approval for that or not?
My understanding is that there's no formal approval, but it's typical in active construction that stockpiling of material is a temporary transient use that isn't explicitly regulated. My understanding, this has been stockpiled for quite a while, which I think is why Oak Bay is now attempting to formalize permissions.
But there were no permissions given to stockpile in the past.
That's my understanding.
So I just want to cover what has transpired and make it very apparent of what has occurred here. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Yanko, followed by Councillor Bochek, please.
Well, as you said, this is, we're not making any decisions today, and that we're going to a public meeting. But I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, this may be the only opportunity that council can have their comments or their position made clear on this issue. Am I correct? Or do we have to wait till after we get public comments before the council makes their comments? Because I want to make them now.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Wienko, this is not the only opportunity. Think of this as a typical zoning bylaw amendment. Essentially, that's what it is, except that it would expire. So there will be the formal public meeting, and then council will have an opportunity to have discussion and to ask questions, and it'll follow the normal zoning bylaw amendment process.
Okay, but normally something like this, council makes their comments known today, and I'm just wondering if a public meeting is actually necessary. We've got a lot of emails right now, and the vast majority of those emails do not want this crushing to happen on site, and I can't see that trend changing with the public input. But you can go ahead and do that, but it's pretty obvious. I think we know the outcome already. And I'm quite concerned that the Oak Bay management may not accept the outcome of the public comments and plan accordingly. For example, if I think the public is going to say they don't want the crushing on site, they want the stuff moved off site and so on. And I hope we don't get into an argument or debate with the Oak Bay management about how they interpret the outcome of the public meeting. And my other concern is that I'm really worried about, besides the noise, I'm worried about approving this for open-ended 6 days a week for 2 years. I think that's unacceptable. It doesn't take that long to do this. They should be looking at if they're going to crush on site, I would be more amenable to say off season when people are indoors. In other words, late fall, early spring, when people are indoors and not trying to enjoy the open air environment around Oak Bay. So I think the Oak Bay management should consider specific times of the year that they want to do this, and then they would maybe get my ear. And the other issue, of course, is besides the noise, is the dust. And we're right, basically, with the west wind, a lot of that dust is going to end up in the wetlands behind the Summerside development and into the water and so on. And there's a lot of dust associated with the crushing, and it's going to end up in some environmentally sensitive areas and so on. So I'm going to have a lot of problems getting to the point where I would agree to have the crushing on site. So those are my comments.
If I may respond, Councillor Wienko, I'm trying to piece together the semi-questions in there. The public meeting would give everybody an opportunity to speak, and it is a requirement of the Planning Act. So we can't skip it. It's a statutory requirement because this is a zoning bylaw amendment. Council is required to have an open mind and listen to all the feedback. I know that there has been concerns from members of the public, and I hope that they do participate in the public meeting when we have it. And I would just like to reiterate, council would be passing or not passing or deferring whatever comes out of this. So Oak Bay can't come to the public meeting, hear what they want to hear and run with it. It still requires a council resolution like a normal zoning bylaw would to come into effect. So that control is still there. And Oak Bay as an applicant would have appeal rights, as would any members of the public who participated in the public meeting in accordance with the Planning Act. So I just want to lay that out so that we're all on the same page, that there is no decision made and there cannot be a decision made today on this application without a public meeting.
No, I'm not saying I'm all for the public meeting, but I think we all know the outcome of the public meeting. And I think Oak Bay management should be heavily considering Plan B because I don't think Plan A is going to fly. So I'm just saying that I wouldn't mind hearing back from Oak Bay what their detailed Plan B is, because don't waste.
Thank you. Councilor Bocheck, followed by Mr. Bickfield, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of comments, because we're not moving to any radical movement today on whether we're approving this or not. I've been working with the Oak Bay management now for 8 years, working to help them to proceed with the development and break down a few walls here and there. Main concern has always been environmental and controlling the breakout and the development in whole. When it comes to the crushing of rocks, I see the potential for the management to take advantage of the material being on site, crushing it on site and reusing it on site for roads or for fill or backfilling or whatever. The alternative to this is to load these rocks into a truck, which is very, very noisy, taking it off site, crushing it off site, and then trucking it back into the site. And again, creating all the noise of banging tailgates and everything else. So there's two sides to this story. Overwhelmingly, I have heard from the residents of Oak Bay that they do not want the crushing on site. I represent the constituents of Oak Bay and my ward, not the developer. And if I'm listening to my constituents, it's very clear that they don't want this crushing done on site. So I'll be standing by listening to everybody in the public meeting and their thoughts, but it's very clear to me at this point in time that the residents of my ward do not want the crushing on site. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bickfield, please.
Well, I don't know if I have too much to add from what your excellent planner has done in terms of laying out process, but I just wanted to make the point that a public meeting is required here. And I also wanted to make the point that council should in some ways be careful to keep their powder dry on this, because there is a process and there will be a decision that council will have to make. It's a statutory decision. And in making that decision, you will have to receive all the information, including members of the public. But having said that, I think some really good and issues were put forward today in this discussion. And I think it's useful for the developer to hear those comments as a presage to, the process as we move forward.
Thank you. Ms. Boutier.
Through your worship, I know I'm a little late in the game, but I heard earlier statements about questions about the past. I do have Cody on standby. Mayor Kutsier, up to you if you want to call upon him to provide a little bit of background from, what has happened in the last year or so.
I don't know if that will be required. My additional comments to this are basically, I know the developer has heard the concerns expressed to date. We've certainly received a ton of correspondence, including people who have commented that the rock blasting or crushing, I'm not sure which, has caused damage to some of the homes in the area due to the vibrations. I think that there's no question in my mind that if the applicant wants to do rock crushing on site, they should do their best to address all the concerns that they've heard and that we've received. I think I agree with Councilor Yanko that maybe if they're going to do crushing, restricting it to certain closed window seasons might be a compromise that might be acceptable to some. I don't know. I don't want to pre-guess how council is going to vote. But I think that clearly at the public meeting, the more information that can be provided, the better for everyone. Councilor Hazelton, you had an additional comment?
If I may, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to draw a little bit of an analogy here. If I go out and build a building without a building permit, I'm penalized because I've done something illegal. And it would appear to me that Oak Bay has gone off and done things illegal, and we've heard from the community that it's had a significant impact in the community. And I'm wondering, in the world of fairness, one of the things that I keep hearing from my constituents is we just want to be treated fair. Why do people get away with things and don't get treated the same as I do? I go build a building without a building permit, I'm penalized. So what is the strategy to deal with Oak Bay, given that they've gone and done this illegal thing and had such a negative impact on the residents already?
All right, we better bring in Cody, Mr. Avery, to comment on whether or not he's been doing any investigations into any alleged illegal activity. Mr. Avery.
Good morning, Your Worship, members of council. My apologies, I wasn't on the meeting there for the initial part of this conversation and Ms. Goddard's presentation, so I apologize if I'm ill-informed here. With regards to Councillor Hazelton's comments on call it illegal building or illegal construction and development, that would not be my realm as a municipal enforcement officer for our planning department. If there's construction that's taking place in terms of buildings being built, that would be a building department concern. Pointing the question back to Councillor Hazelton in terms of specifying the concerns there with illegal construction or development. Again, I apologize, I wasn't on the beginning of the presentation here. So I could point that question back to you for some more specifics, but what I can say just in my time here, I have dealt with multiple concerns, obviously, with Oak Bay development. Both myself as municipal enforcement officer, our bylaw department's also, dealing with concerns and complaints around noise, rock crushing, or blasting, all of the above. With respect to rock crushing, obviously it hasn't been performed yet, so we haven't received any sort of enforcement complaints, or nor have we done investigations on concerns of rock crushing. Based on my limited involvement on the file with our past director of planning, there's been some correspondence back and forth with Oak Bay, with Mr. Pickfield, regarding the proposed rock crushing, but I haven't done or performed any investigations regarding current or past rock crushing activities.
So Mayor, we know that there's been a lot of rock crushing going on. The fact that Cody hasn't been exposed to it is, in my opinion, not relevant. It is there. There's nobody saying it hasn't gone on. And I'm wondering who is going to own the issue at the township to determine whether or not there should be penalties applied, given this violation and illegal act that has disrupted the community.
I'd be careful, Councillor Hazelton, to make the accusation, or make the suggestion we know that rock crushing is going on without an investigation taking place. I think you could get yourself in a lot of trouble jumping to conclusions, because I don't know if rock crushing has been going on or just rock blasting. So I caution you on that. Ms. Boutier.
Through your worship, I think you've covered it well. I was just about to say that it is up to bylaw enforcement to investigate complaints and to act appropriately as they deem appropriate. We do have an educate first, enforce secondly principle that we usually do, and a lot of the times the how we proceed is actually to get a legal opinion, which we did obtain through Mr. Pickfield on rock crushing and the interpretation of our zoning bylaw. So if it was to have occurred after a letter was sent on our interpretation, I think we would have dug a bit deeper. I believe Oak Bay did apply to a temporary use right subsequently after our opinion was shared with them. Therefore, that is why this is here for council's information today.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Since I raised the
Councillor Cooper, when you lean forward, we can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All right, I was trying to get closer so you could hear me, but I'll back up. Just briefly, I did raise this issue. And I think it's not about what's been approved going forward. The other point that's being raised is, this is, if you read anything our constituents are telling us, this has gone on for 18 months. And it's not just blasting, it's according to everything I've read, but crushing too. So that's the fact. And if we didn't investigate it, that's very concerning. I hope we can work with our staff on finding ways in the future not to have things just float by that are really quite troublesome and illegal. So thank you.
Councilor Wojcik.
So I addressed these concerns of rock crushing and et cetera when Nick Popovich was our director of planning. So for most of us on council that were here during that term, you can put that date in mind. He did bring a report to council about rock crushing and that it was not allowed. It was under the Mining and Quarries Act or something. And so there is a history here. There's a written history. And if anybody wants or cares to go back and look, it started with in the day of Nick Popovich as our planning director. And there'll be quite a bit on file from that time because I had many meetings with him about it. Maybe of some assistance to somebody on staff. Thank you.
Thank you. The motion in front of me is moved by Councilor Rienko, seconded by Councilor Jarvis. Be it resolved that council received the report regarding the Oak Bay Development's temporary use application development services department report 2022-47 for information. And the council acknowledge a public meeting regarding the application for Oak Bay Development's temporary use bylaw will be scheduled by staff per the Planning Act. All those in favor? And that is carried. Next step is for us to go into closed, but before we go into closed, we did have some discussion earlier this morning in regard to a parking study. And I don't want to get into too lengthy a discussion. Ms. Way has been kind enough to draft a potential motion, and that would be it resolved that council requests a parking study to the satisfaction of the township for the common element condominium C 2020-09. I don't know if we want to restrict it to that or just for the Oak Bay development to be more general. But I'm going to ask, I think I'm going to go first to Ms. Godot to see, because she's the one who suggested something along this line, I think. Ms. Godot, am I misquoting you? And you are muted.
Thank you.
It's easier to misquote you when you're muted.
My understanding is that council wanted us to look at parking standards in terms of the zoning bylaw as a whole. For the Marina towns, that opportunity has passed. We've already approved the site plan as a township, so that's been sorted. But my understanding was we were looking at visitor parking as a whole. Right now, the zoning bylaw only requires visitor parking for apartments. Speaks nothing for visitor parking for townhomes or anything like that. So okay. I thought you were looking for sort of a more general, not specific to Oak Bay, but if I'm misunderstanding, please let me know.
Yeah, no, and I think you're very wise to advise us not to try to be going backwards with this, but rather going forward. And that in the future, we should have parking, the parking bylaw that sets standards for, let me call it multi-residential developments of all types.
Mm-hmm.
And so, anyway, council, any comments on this? Do we want to initiate a parking study for, let me call it multi-residential developments? I think that's pretty general and just say multi-residential. And I'm going to start with Councilors Hazelton, Cooper, and Bocheck, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Jen. I think you've nailed it. I think we have to recognize that in our community, policies that we may have copied and pasted from urban areas don't apply, and that we need to understand what is needed here and put policies in place that are appropriate for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor Kutzier, and this will be one of the shortest comments. I completely agree. And Jen, fantastic. Not just this particular matter, but all your comments this morning have been really very clear and helpful to council. So thanks for the great work.
Thank you.
Wow, I love it. Such a positive remark from Councilor Cooper. Well done. Councilor Bocheck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My concerns with this is, again, we are overstepping our boundaries, I believe, as a municipality, the second tier. We're a commenting agent to the district to do with matters of planning of subdivisions. I think it's upon us to communicate very clearly to the district that we want the parking issues addressed. And that's part of our agreement with the tier one government as a commenting agent. Let them spend the money, let them spend the staff time, let them spend everything they have to do what we've asked them to do in the way of commenting and expressing our concerns to them over the parking matter. I truly believe that we don't have the funding or the staff to be getting involved, so deeply involved in something that we have no approval authority in the end. So to express to district our concerns, I think, is the right mode of action. And this goes for everything we do here. We constantly spend staff time and money on things that we have no ability to control. We're simply commenting here. And if I'm wrong, correct me, but we constantly step out of our lane and go into areas we shouldn't be in, and it costs the taxpayers money at this end of things. So perhaps legal advice on this part would probably be what I would be seeking, whether we need to be involved or do we just simply comment to district and let them get involved. Thank you.
Ms. Gadet.
If I may just provide some clarity. So Councillor Bocheck, you're right that the district is the approval authority for condos and subdivisions and part lot control. However, the township is in charge of the zoning bylaw, and the parking standards are from the township zoning bylaw. So our zoning bylaw right now does not establish visitor parking requirements for any type of residential use except apartments. So there are a number of site-specific zones for Oak Bay, and I haven't gone into each of them to see if they've revised the parking amount that they're required to, but there are no apartments proposed. So my understanding is there's technically nothing in our zoning bylaw requiring them to provide visitor parking. Now, from a sales perspective, they obviously want to, but it's our zoning bylaw that is the issue regarding parking. So if we establish it, then the district takes that into consideration, and we're the ones passing the site plan, which again looks at the zoning. They're the ones doing the layout of the roads and that sort of thing. So it is the township's responsibility to look after the zoning. But you know, we do collaborate with the district, so we can say, you know, we've heard there are parking concerns. Let's keep this in mind as we go through the phases. But it is the zoning bylaw that regulates parking.
Well, thank you. Mr. Peckfield, before I go back to council.
Yeah, I'll be very brief because once again, Jen has nailed it. So one way to look at it is that the district's approval here is about where the parking should go within the context of a plan of subdivision. It's like location and those types of issues. The actual number of spaces required is a zoning issue. And that issue is really full square within the jurisdiction of the township to decide. So if it's appropriate to look at this, revisit this issue and ask staff to revisit this issue, that would certainly be well within your purview to direct that.
Thank you. Councillor Yanko, followed by Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah, that's the point I was going to make, is that we do have authority when it comes to making zoning bylaws, et cetera, and the district has to follow them. So, you know, we have the various additional developments coming up in Oak Bay, and we also have the development at 7 Port 7 Heights coming up. And so there's a whole slew of condominium developments going to come forward in the next little while. And we need to get onto this as soon as possible to get our opinion as to how many parking spaces per number of condos or whatever it is as soon as possible, because there's a number of developments coming.
Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah, and I'm in full support of the whole concept of the parking study with regards to the zoning bylaw. So that's great. And Jen, yeah, I applaud the work that you've done, and your comments really do help. For clarification, so the only thing I'm asking here is if we move ahead with this and we come up with a new zoning bylaw with regards to parking, would that have any effect on future applications coming in from Oak Bay?
So through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Jarvis, I have to look at each of the site-specific zones for Oak Bay and make sure that they haven't established a site-specific visitor parking requirement. In the Marina towns, I looked and they didn't. So they were looking at the parent parking provisions, which don't require any parking for townhomes. So if we fixed that in the parent zone, as long as there wasn't a site-specific bylaw that overrode parking, that parent zone would apply to everything in the township.
So anything coming down the pipe, including possibly more stuff coming in from Oak Bay.
Yes, and I just would like the council to be aware that there would be costs associated with hiring a traffic. Usually they're the ones who do the traffic engineers do a parking study. We can look at comparables, but often they kind of chime in a little bit and give their expertise. So it's not just potentially not just planning staff time. It could involve other consultants, and then there would be public meetings held where you'd hear from members of the public and the development community as well.
Okay, so I think if I may bridge off on that, you know, the current, the most recent draft that Ms. Way has provided says basically directing staff to initiate a parking study on multi-residential developments. My question to council is, and I'm taking absolutely into like the fact that we have overburdened our existing planning staff already with many requests, and that we've also overburdened our budget. Do we need a parking study done, or should we be a little simpler and simply asking staff to propose a parking amendment to our bylaw? I'm not sure what the right word. And what I mean by that is, right now, and I'll use the Marina towns as an example, they have a 2.1 spots per unit. Each unit has a garage, each unit has one spot in front of it, and then they have 7 parking spots spread over 52 units. So allow me to round without having getting my calculator out. So right now it says 2.1. I think we can have a discussion about whether there should be 2.5 spots per housing unit, or 3 spots per housing unit, without getting a parking study done with all sorts of outside expertise. Because what are they going to do? They're going to try to study how many people park at the average cottage. I think that's just a waste of money. Just my comment on that. And I think we can come up with a number, and I believe our planning staff, based with all their experience, we could say, well, this is typical here and this is typical there, and we'll say, well, we prefer 2.5 versus 2.2 because we know that nobody's reaching us by public transit. One argument. I'm going to let Mr. Borean make a quick comment because I'm sure he would love to, and then we'll go to Councillor Cooper, and we're going to try to wind this up fairly quickly because people must be getting hungry.
I just want to take a minute to thank you for the consideration you gave us today, and thank Ms. Gadet, Jen, for her work on this. And we'll circle back and continue to work with you and see where we go. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Very brief again, and I completely agree with you in terms of let's not build the Aswan Dam or whatever they call it. It's let's keep it simple, stupid, and come up with a formula. But let's be careful with our comparators. We don't want to be comparing ourselves to Markham or Bracebridge. Those are urban settings. This is a rural setting where people are not A, getting public transit, and B, traveling distances to visit. It's a different paradigm. So I think we need to be exceedingly careful when we're studying anything like this to make sure we're studying like versus unlike. So that's my only suggestion. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to suggest, and then I'll go to Councillor Wanko, that we'll have be it resolved that council direct staff to propose a parking, requirement for multi-residential developments within the township zoning bylaw. Something quite simple like that. Councillor Rianco.
You may want to get the district involved because this is a larger issue to other townships within the district. So district may want to be involved for Lake of Bays and Muskoka Lakes and so on, that it would apply to everybody. So they maybe actually do the work for us. So I don't know, maybe Councillor Cooper can take that up and talk to them to find out what involvement they might have, and maybe they'll do it for us.
Well, and I think that's an interesting remark, that because given the amount of multi-residential developments in other parts of Muskoka, they might already have a figure that works for them, and they might say 2.5 is the magic number. I have no idea.
Happy to do that, and I will be stressing the rural versus urban issue, because we don't want to be playing with or using comparators like Bracebridge, Gravenhurst, and Huntsville. Thank you.
All right. How about moved by Councillor Cooper, seconded by Councillor Wienko, be it resolved, the council directs staff to study parking levels required for multi-residential developments in our this township zoning bylaw. General and open, and so we're not, and obviously that means a little bit of research will have to be done what's happening in other rural areas. Any further comment? Councillor Wojcik.
Sorry for the late comment, but I think we all need to understand that there is a marina involved here across the street, which has 50 or 60 boat slips in it. And there is a plan for a community building to be built with a gymnasium. I think it was, Mr. Borean can correct me if I'm wrong, but there was going to be a building on the northwest side of the property where all the residents would have access to a fitness facility and that kind of stuff. So it's all encompassing. There could be other parking lots on the property that we're not talking about. There could be other amenities that we're not talking about. And hence the reason I thought that district would be a good place to go, because they're in charge of the overall site approval, the overall approval of the subdivision. And they would have more information than that we're given here, and have a view from 30,000 feet that we're not getting. So that's my closing comments. Thank you.
I think that's a very important comment, because we know that, for instance, the golf clubhouse parking lot takes overflow from Lynx Trail when events are happening. Somebody's hosting a party on Lynx Trail, for instance.
Yeah.
Anyway, the resolution is again moved by Councillor Cooper, seconded by Councillor Wienko. Be it resolved, the council directs staff to propose parking level requirements for multi-residential developments within the township zoning bylaw. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Ms. Wade, did you get that? Perfect. What's next on our agenda is closed, and I'm going to propose that we do that after lunch. It is now almost 12:20, and that we go into close at 1 o'clock, so everybody has a chance to get a bite to eat. And given that, I'm sure Ms. Wade would probably want me to read the resolution now. And do you want me to put the current time or the 1 o'clock time on when we go into closed?
The 1 p.m. time, please, and thank you.
I have moved by Councillor Bocheck, seconded by Councillor Yanko, whereas Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act of 2001, as amended, provides authority for councils of municipalities to close a meeting or parts of a meeting to the public if the subject matter pertains to a matter identified in Section 239(2). And whereas Council of the Township of Georgia Bay deems it necessary to close this portion of the meeting in order to address matters under the following sections of 239(2). Marina Town's financial agreement, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, and update to master agreement, again, it's the same advice requiring solicitor-client privilege. Now be it resolved that Council Township of Georgia Bay moves into a closed session special council planning council at 1 p.m. All those in favor? And that is carried. I think I saw enough hands. Now I did. And so we'll disconnect from this link, if I understand correctly, and sign in with the second link that we have at 1 o'clock.
Yes.
All right.